everyone, and welcome to SoulSpeak. Today, I'm excited, extra excited, because we have the lovely author, Willow Ford.
Hi,
Welcome,
everyone.
Willow. Hi.
Hello.
And before we get really into our conversation that I'm excited about, I would just like to read your bio to give you a proper and warm welcome. So here we go, everyone. Willow Ford. Willow had the privilege of growing up with elders on a sunny front porch in the country. There, she learned her family's history, hospitality, and the art of good storytelling. Her favorite stories were those about dark and haunted places and the entities, excuse me, that lurked there. But time was not kind. Slowly, she lost her elders, and her days on the porch became fewer and farther between. The joy of storytelling stayed with her, however, and the paper became her audience. Now, Willow shares her story with the world as a tribute to her ancestors. In the summer of 2015, she published her first book, The Dogwood Grove. She went on to publish two more books before taking a life break, because we got to do that sometimes. She entered the Bookish Community that I'm going to ask her about with the first book of her trilogy, The Fadian Experiment, which I read, and we're going to be getting into that. And she's back later this summer with her new book, The Fadian Escape, which is part 2. So with that, I say welcome, welcome, Willow. Yay!
Hi. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So before we started recording, actually, I had a couple of questions that I said, you know what, let me save for the recording because I just get overly excited when I get into a conversation. So the first thing I wanted to share with you, Willow, is how much of an inspiration you are to me. And I know I can come across, like I was saying, as a gusher because my emotions are just intense. If I'm happy, it's on high. If I'm upset, it's on high. So what I wanted to say is I am currently writing a memoir, which is one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to do, just one of them. And a couple of years ago, I had intentionally on Instagram surrounded myself around authors because I didn't feel like I could be an author. But if I put myself in the environment, I felt like, I will start to believe by osmosis. So just being around you and seeing in your bio when you started, 2015, you have a couple of books, and having read your book is the true inspiration to me because I speak to you. You're another human being, right? Because I tend to idolize what it is that I don't particularly understand. But I'm
Okay.
seeing the breakdown of it. I'm talking to you, you're a human being. You wrote your book, you have several books, and I read your book. So, anyway, I just wanted to let you know just how much of an inspiration that is to me. And if that was an overwhelming gushing, you don't have to say anything, but I just wanted you to know. So, yeah, let me stop talking now. Willow, do you have something to say?
You are a bright spot and a blessing. And I'm truly blessed to have heard that because that's an inspiration in turn to me, because that tells me, you have dark nights of the soul when you're a writer, when you're an author and you're just like, all right, I only sold one book today or this week or whatever, or this chapter looks cray and Z. Okay, like there's just no way around it. But, when you're working, you never know who's observing you, and you just got to keep putting it out there. And a lot of people are too shy to say, hey, that's an inspiration to me, or hey, I look forward to your updates, even when they're you crying about, oh my God, plot hole. And you were brave enough and kind enough to share that with me, and I appreciate it. Okay, so gush away, because for me, that's just prompting me to keep going. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
You're
I'm blessed to receive that.
welcome. You're welcome, Willow. You're welcome. So now the second thing that I'm going to get into, it's a little bit minor, but I was just curious about this. What did you mean when you said the bookish community in the bio?
Um, it's a hashtag,
Mm,
and someone blessed me with that.
mm,
I didn't come up with it, but
mhm,
they put it on something in a reference to my first book, and I kind of looked it up, and it's sort of where you overlap between being an author and a reader. There are many just people
mm,
who are soul readers, but there's Bookstagram, and Bookstagram is very pretty,
mm,
and not necessarily a bad thing. And there are reviews, but I think the bookish community is sort of like that gray area where the reader and the author, or the author who is a reader, come
mm,
together. So
mm.
I like that. I like the idea that, Bookstagram is beautiful, it's polished. It's like, it's Hollywood versus, Broadway. Like
Got
Hollywood
it.
is very polished, and there's a team to make everything look perfect, and
Hmm.
Broadway is live, and it is what it is right there in
Right,
real time. So
right.
I think they're both equally wonderful, but I know that I'm part of the bookish community, because if you've seen my feed, it's here and there.
Mm.
Nothing professional and pretty about it. It's me throwing things together on Canva, and taking pictures with my phone. But Bookstagram is very, very polished, very beautiful. They have
Ah,
thousands of followers, and most of them are readers, and
uh-huh.
we love our readers, but
Right.
the bookish community is readers, other authors, and everybody kind of in between. So
Okay. All right. That's good to know. I would say I would fit more in the bookish community because from what you're describing as in Bookstagram, and these are two very new, like I just learned about the phrases just now. Um, I would think that people in Bookstagram would have a team, because there's more to just posting stuff that looks great online. A lot of people have teams that do that. And when you're doing a thing on your own and you're learning along the way, which I can completely appreciate, it's an evolving process.
mhm.
So for me, at least on my page, both of my pages, but more SoulSpeak because I'm developing that as a business. And even to say that makes me nervous.
Yeah,
Um,
don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. You got this. It's
but it's like evolving. It's like, oh, I didn't know how to do this. Even to a certain extent, I didn't know how to make my posts uh Instagram, like to make it the size of Instagram. So there were like all different sizes. I mean, I'm learning along the way, and I think that's a beauty. That's a
Yes,
beautiful
and it's
thing.
fun. It is fun,
Yeah.
and that's why I say I'm more bookish. People
Yeah.
on Bookstagram have sponsored posts by like candle companies, and
Right.
free gifts from publishers, and they're very polished. And maybe one day I'll get there, but for
Maybe.
now, I'm
Yes.
having fun in the bookish community where we like our books, we read our books, and
We
we do what
come
we
the
can.
way that
So
we are. Yes, we come the
yes,
way we are, learn along the way. So I appreciate
exactly.
that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let me ask you now, because I read your book, The Fadian Experiment, and I would love for you to give the audience a synopsis of what the book is about, because I have questions and I'm so glad I have the artist here to give me some answers. So yes, please do tell us, Willow, what is the synopsis?
See, caught me off guard. I
Sorry.
can read it to you. All right, no, I'm not gonna read it. Basically, it's a take on the chosen one
Mhm.
trope. Harry Potter was the chosen one. Except this chosen one doesn't get to step into her power right away.
Mm.
In fact, she's in a way running from it.
Mm.
Because her power attracts parasites. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's,
Mm.
that's a whole lesson right there, running
Mhm.
from your own power. And then attracts parasites. And they're not just, bottom feeders. They're people with power who want to use her abilities, not only against the world, but against her.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
And
Sorry, let
then
me shut up. You preaching.
they're doing it while they're focusing on her while ignoring an even bigger problem that's a threat to everyone in the city of Obey City.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the city. So, it's kind of like how people talk about climate change. Everyone's worried about smaller divisions, but we have the bigger issue of disaster weather that's coming for us in the next 50 to 70 years, or tomorrow, depending on who you ask. But it's a situation where there is a big bad, an overall threat. And honestly, something she probably maybe can resolve, who knows? But we never get to that because people are so busy trying to maintain their status quo or claw their way up the socioeconomic ladder using her powers. So.
You have said a lot. Now, thank you for the underlying meaning. So I'm going to try to phrase my question in a way that makes sense. There is an overall plot in the book, though. Like, I get the underlying meaning, but can you tell us where the book takes place? Where the environment takes place, because that's where I have questions about.
Okay.
So please tell us that as well.
Okay. So it's a fictionalized version of Philadelphia. It's sort of a dystopia where you have very wealthy families occupying it, and their, courts and tagalongs and staff occupying these high-rise buildings in the middle of the city. And then as you go out further, you have people who are poor and poor. You have a working class ring, people who are in the unions and are protected by the union, and the union itself actually occupies one of the towers, one of the unions. And then you have an outer ring of people who are just living hand to mouth, like abject poverty. As the school system is called the method, they sort of assess you as you're younger, and you have certain tracks, and that gets you further and further within the ring, or closer to more stability, financial and economic and social stability. But if you can't jump through their hoops or pass their tests, then you fall further and further back. And essentially, we're dealing with a lady from a family that's barely above homelessness. The only reason her mother has a place to stay is because she's carrying on an affair with a man who's in a more stable socioeconomic ring. And so this young lady faces a lot of, I work in social services, and this is what I see with a lot of my young clients who are trying to better themselves, but they don't have the resources. And then the resources I have aren't meant for them because they haven't made other choices that might not be best for them, And I just wanted to sort of show that this young lady, Kalia, she has potential. Her potential in this case is her power, but also as an individual. And literally everyone's coming for her. And it's basically about her struggle to avoid these traps. And then someone comes in and says, hey, let me lend you a hand. And they reach the hand out and they're trying to help her. This person is is her father. It turns out he's been living the high life all along, never helped her, but she's willing because now she's trapped. She's in a situation where these things are following her or pursuing her, and that's just a trap. It's a total trap. He wants the power for himself and you see his reasonings, and then there's a big bad, and that is where we begin to reveal the layers of how corrupt this particular microcosm is. So it goes from there. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. You did. Okay. So there are so many issues that you've touched, even with what you said and in the book. So I just want to ask, the first question is, what is the genre of this book? Because I feel you've merged levels of spirituality and sci-fi with socioeconomic and racial issues. So what is the genre of this book? This hits so many areas.
I just say speculative fiction.
Speculative fiction. Okay.
I've been pushed more into sci-fi because it's dystopia. There are, it's just an experiment, the science part of it, but
Right.
it's a spiritual part. It's this fight between, science and, other entities. And it's like, are we the head, the heart, is it spirit, things like that. So it's sci-fi, it's a little bit of horror because there's, ghosts, like the living ghost situation. Or I guess the ghosts that can affect things. Like they're not woo ghosts, but these are people who are effectively dead. Their bodies are gone. They're
Girl,
just
I was like, what? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. It's a lot for 157 pages, right? Right. I should come, it should come with the day pass, or like the day pass says spa, because I unload, and that's where that was. It started out, this book started out as a series of blog posts on an old website I had, and I sort of put them together, smoothed them out, gave them a better intro. And I don't know, it kind of started with, I was at the top of my block, and you can see the towers. Like Philadelphia has this thing, it's a low-rise city. And now it's becoming higher, but there was a whole superstition about nothing can be higher than our city hall, which is a beautiful late 1800s, late 19th century building. And for many, many years, nothing was built higher than that. And so it's a unique terrain, which affords us, views of the towers they have built. And we have the Comcast, everything's in the last 30 years, they've sort of, thumbed their noses at that, and now they build high rise buildings. But
Right.
so it's kind of like, imagine, I live in the hood, so imagine some kid who's dreaming of something different, not necessarily better, but different. And they just look downtown and they say, what if? And it's just sort of like, it's kind of like it's taunting you. If if you're having a bad day, you're just like, I bet you those people are living a glamorous life. I can see their string lights and their party. The closer you get in, the more you get into downtown, obviously the more you can see. But it's just like, if you were in a introverted mood, like you might really like go through some things, like looking at these beautiful buildings of steel and glass reflecting their light at you, versus your row house that your parents can't get the loan they need to keep the bricks from falling down on your car. So it's a lot
And
going on in the
feeling
city,
left out, and
feeling left out,
feeling that there is a life that does not belong to you, that you cannot have,
that you
yeah.
cannot have. And that was part of it. But like I said, a lot of it stems from just, I've been at my job for 15 years, and we have young ladies who don't make the choice to become young mothers. I have no resources for them. How is that possible? How? Once you turn 22, I have no resources for you, even though you might need a little bit here and there. Like over the years, we've taken more and more away. Like I can guide you somewhere else, but it won't be what I can give to a young lady who might have a child.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong
It's
with
like
having a child.
like being I will find that, especially in this past pandemic that has happened, I did leave my job, and I had some resources, thank goodness, but there was one point where I called myself planning ahead and panicking at the same time. So I don't know how those two things, they did not exist in harmony. So let's just say that. So I had looked into perhaps doing food stamps. And I was like, okay, let me just look and see what the criterias are. And you basically, to get help with food stamps, you gotta be in a really bad state. Like they don't care if you're in between, if you have $1 left after rent, if you have to be in such a bad way. You have to be in such a bad way. And I feel like that's so sad. I also went through that with school and financial aid. I had to use my grandparents' income tax. So if you're in between, Yeah.
This is being recorded, ma'am. No,
This
wait.
is so many years later, Jesus.
We still getting people for Sandy and
Oh my
Irene.
God.
Be careful with that.
Yeah,
So
but
anyway,
I
let's
did
gloss over that.
live. I
Got out.
was a dependent of theirs. I was a dependent of theirs, so
Mhm.
it was legal. But basically, it's you have to be in a bad way to get help. There's no helping you if you're in between so that you can make it to a better place. And that is go ahead, but that is
Let me
like
twist
people
that
get
for you.
lost in there, you know, in that.
Exactly. Let
Yeah.
me twist that for you. If
Mhm.
you can't be something they can pity and look down on, you can't get help.
It's very true. And then later on, make an example and a story as if you're being praised, but really it's them praising their own selves, to
Yes,
be
pain
honest.
porn.
Yeah.
It's called pain.
Yeah.
I mean, I call it pain porn. It's one of the many versions of pain porn. But
That
yes,
actually, did you see the movie 40-year-old version?
no.
That's what she called it, poverty porn. That's what she
Poverty.
called.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, she did a whole what you call it? She did a whole freestyle for poverty porn, she called it.
Yes.
I
It's
love that
poverty
movie,
porn
by the
and
way.
then
Pain
um
porn.
pain porn, and I was reading something on Twitter this morning, basically how a lot of times Black women are the face of what needs to be said. And,
Mm.
while we're saying it in the moment, there is no support, but there's always that kind
Mm.
of nudge or whisper after the meeting. And well,
It's
it
so
needs to be
true.
said. Yeah, you're from corporate America, it needed to be said. I'm glad you stood up for yourself. I support you,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't say anything at the time when, this horrible policy was being put into place or whatever. So I kind of wanted to do that as well. Like, she's sort of charged with correcting a lot. Kalia is charged,
Mm-hmm.
everyone expects her to correct certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but you're not supporting her. Like,
You're right.
she needs training. She needs, not to be under threat of her life, but
Right.
this is what you expect and it needs to be done. So I
Right.
wanted to put that element in there too.
This is an issue, honestly. I'm glad that you mentioned corporate America, but this is also an issue in the Black community. And as I get older, this might be the times that we're into, there's more vocabulary for my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an involuntary advocate for myself from a kid. And this is like having experienced sexual abuse and verbal abuse and not being supported by my family. I feel like I always find a way to put that in anything I'm talking about, but it's so important to me, for me to remember. But anyway, so having been a child at 8 years old, having expressed that what I went through and not getting the support that I needed, what you're discussing, like being brave and standing up for myself at 8 years old, that is, oh my God, so scary, which explains why I have depression and anxiety and all of these other things, because that does come as a result of having so much on your shoulders, but not having the right support, like you said. So having the vocabulary and identifying these issues is a step towards being involved and changing the nuancedness of those situations. Because, yeah,
Exactly.
be brave, yeah, speak up, but the aftermath of that,
No
or
one.
the becoming of it, or the being of it, is absolutely miserable if that human being doesn't have the type of support that they need. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and you're so brave, but you shouldn't have to be. You know what I mean? The
Right,
flip side of that is, well, why did I have to be? And
right.
you're so brave, but then the fallout, the anxiety, the depression,
And
the
then the
social anxiety.
expectation of you to be brave.
That there you go. And
Yeah.
that's the first poison dart. And then in the aftermath, no one addresses the depression, the anxiety, the inability to regulate or cope with your emotions. And then that becomes a personality. Oh, well, Black girls are just like that. They're hair trigger temper, oh, they get moody. No, I'm going through something because
A
I've had to
lot of
be
some
brave.
things.
for all of us, the weakest
Right.
person has had to be, or not necessarily weakest, but the most, the person held in least regard had to be brave
Right.
enough for the group. Now the whole group benefits, but no one is
Yes.
doing a care or checking up on the
That
person who saved
person.
everyone, except for going, hey, you're awesome. All right. That's super
Yes.
cool. And you're like, all
Yes.
right, so, this is the next fight. Maybe you'll lead it. Oh, well, you're
Yeah.
just so good at it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Which
So
is
I
why I
wanted,
haven't. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Willow, because
I said,
I'm going in.
I said, I kind of wanted to show that because she say, spoiler, she
Mm-hmm.
has a hand in assisting the other Fadians that exist,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, her payback is not pretty. Uh,
Mm.
not pretty.
So I
So
have a question about this Collegia, and I have a lot of questions. So, and this might be a spoiler as well. And if anybody wants further clarification, go get the book so you can understand fully what I'm talking about, because there are different parts that I am going to like ask specific questions about, Willow, since I have you here. Is it true, and I might have misunderstood this, does this take place in the mind of a woman? Because there's a woman who's sleeping. So this whole environment that really exists really takes place in the mind of another human being. Is
that is
that,
correct. That
I
is the
did get
experiment.
it. I
Yes.
get it. I was
And
like,
I don't go a lot into it. And some of my readers have been like, no, you need to go. You need to explain that. I'm like, no, it's
yes.
coming. Give it two more books. You're going to get it. Well, give it this book. Yeah. Third book. You'll get more
Okay.
about it. But this is part of a bigger world. Like when I
Son.
say this is like the start of maybe 20 more books, but these won't
Jesus.
necessarily be the main characters, but this is the trilogy. We're going to have a few more that take place in the actual Obey City, the real
Okay.
one. That's
Okay.
that's the and then we'll see why they're creating the Fadians. We haven't gotten there yet, but
Okay.
we'll see why they want they need Kalia and Igoli um to be in the real world. And it's essentially Felder. Felder is doesn't want to die. Like once this experiment is over, which it you know
Is Felder the
Kalia is the
dad?
last. Felder is the dad,
Okay.
and Kalia is the last one. Like there's no more material, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
There are no other Fadians coming, allegedly.
Mm-hmm.
So Kalia is the last one. Kalia is the one they want. Kalia is the one who can shift worlds. That's what they need. They're pulling out. They're gonna pull
Mm.
what's her name out, and so that's gonna cause the Obey City that we're running around in to not exist. And
Mm.
Felder's whole point is to keep the city going. He and the elders, they sort of do their little dirt to keep the Fadians from developing full potential. Kalia
Mm.
doesn't have that interference. She's not taken at birth. She grows up, she's used to being oppressed. So when they come at her with the little stuff, like eventually, yes, it gets to her.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, she's like, oh no, I got this. You know what I mean? She shifts, the ball accidentally shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And then she begins, that I believe it's the second time she shifts on purpose. And it's like,
Mm.
okay. So
Mm. There's everything that you're saying is jam packed with like I feel like 12 conversations,
yeah,
and I know we don't have that much time. I mean, you might just have to come back, Willow. But so this concept of being in like a person's mind is the world in which we live, that sent me into a whole fantasy. Number one, it blew my mind. And then number two, I was like, imagine if I'm in somebody else's mind right now, and that's the world that I'm in. And I'm like, well, is that what God is? I mean, I went to a holes. And then I was like, well, does it mean that whatever it is that God wants for me, that's my limit? Like, I don't have really a choice. Oh my God. That sent me into 45 different directions. I was like, oh my God.
I'm
So
so glad. I'm so glad. Like, it's a tiny book. And maybe I'll go back once I've got some breathing room, and I will expand it, because I didn't explain a lot. I did not, I admit.
I
But yeah,
mean, I was trying to follow, and each thing is a mind-blowing thing. It's like you're not addressing small topics or concepts. They're huge. So yes, I would absolutely love you to go back and, this is where the fans come in. It's like, look, y'all ain't dictating what it is that the author is writing, but I do kind of
no,
feel like that.
I confess to my skirting smaller bigger themes, and focusing on my new show, simply because it's so much bigger. Like, it's so much bigger. Like, there's so much going on. Like, we're in a world within a world within a world, possibly within a
Right.
world. Like,
Right.
there's at least 4 levels to this. We'll see.
It's the first time I've read this type of book. And I'm saying this not to add pressure, but just I feel like it's easy to kind of compare someone to another as a point of reference. This is what I'm comparing it as, but it reminds me of like something like Beloved. Not the obviously you have different styles, but the concepts are so big, and the spiritual aspect, it's difficult to grasp all of these subjects at the same time. It's mind-blowing, whatever wisp that I'm able to to really capture. I'm like, oh shit, but it's a lot. So it reminds me of that. Not to put any pressure on you or anything, but
not at all. But thank you, because I appreciate that. Like, I appreciate the fact that you would even put her in the same sentence with me, or put me in the same sentence with her, because wow, she's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not offended by that. Okay. And I don't feel pressure, because I think I have it mapped out. I think I got the fans. I don't know. I think I can see y'all what you need, but I don't know. We will see August 22nd, when the second part 2 comes out, the Fadian escape. The escape, of course. Escaping the smallest world here, the escaping the mind. So.
Okay. But really, you talk the different concepts that is brought up, like someone or people around you being leeches, and grasping onto your power or your popularity or whatever it is that they can benefit from. That right there, that's a whole book on its own. So can you tell me a little bit more about that, as far as either experiencing it or what inspired that to bring that into the book? And I don't know if that's too broad, so you let me know if that was enough for you to answer.
I think I see it in my work and in my day-to-day life. Like, you see young people with potential, you see older people with potential. But whenever there's someone with the potential to basically make their own path, or just not have an average life, you sort of see people, cheering them on, but chopping them off at the same time, or cheering them on. And there's a saying that I've heard only in Philadelphia: hitching their wagon to your star. So you're a rising star, but did you do this? And you it's kind of like a toxic soup of things. The person who becomes famous, but what did they do here? Okay, did they open up a center? Did they do a scholarship? Like, what did they do? Okay, well, they're getting there. You don't know what debts they had. Not saying that they shouldn't, and that's great that they did, but it's just like, it starts so soon. Like, oh, you're forgetting us. She won one little thing. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So you do see that a lot, or I dated a guy, and he was essentially doing the same job for a grocery store. And I was like, I can get you, $8 more an hour, basically 50% more than what you're making now, if you could do the same thing for the Commonwealth. All of the liquor stores up here are run by the Commonwealth. So, he took the test, he got the job, and through a misunderstanding of his own, he didn't realize that he had full medical the first day. His father says, well, if they're not going to give medical, you might as well just go back to the grocery store because, and it's like, he's like, well, I'll get it in 6 months. Well, 6 months, you could get sick in 6 months. And I was like, that's not true. You get, it turned out later that he just misunderstood. Like,
okay, but he did stay. Like, he stayed in the job.
Yeah, yes, I believe. Yeah, he did stay, but it was just like the first day, like you're telling your son to go back and make a scratch above minimum wage. He's making, I think it was $14 an hour now versus the $8.15 an hour, and that based on one little thing. And it's just like,
man,
like why would you even do that, even if it is a 6 month slog?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
do you think that is more prevalent? And maybe this is not fair because you are no other than a Black person, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask your opinion. Do you think that is prevalent in the Black community over others?
Well, the individual I just told you about was very white. So
okay, no. So there you go.
I think it's where you are. I think it could be regional. Or it could be a socioeconomic thing.
I was going to say maybe it's a poverty.
I think that it's a socioeconomic thing. Like, you might leave us behind. Right. Well, why would he leave? You know what I mean? Like, why would he leave his family behind? Like, he's at least going to come visit. But to me, that when people think that way, that tells me that maybe they know they didn't do enough to provide the best for this child or for themselves. So it's sort of like you're admitting your guilt. But also, why are you trying to sabotage your child? Like, I think it's a socioeconomic thing.
And that's really sad. What that makes me think of, though, because we tend to, and I'm not saying you, I just think overall in the society, we tend to villainize bad behavior. And I do not put bad behavior on any type of pedestal, but we don't get to analyze it enough so that we understand what is actually going on, so that maybe we can help people not repeat that shit,
Right.
So to me, go ahead.
What we consider bad behavior is a coping mechanism.
Correct.
Like, for that family, having everybody in one house, including, extended family, significant others, and children and grandchildren, that was the survival mode. If we're all together, there'll always be enough for everyone if we're all together. But if you get this job and you're going to, if we're all making beans, but if you get this job and you outstrip everyone else, you're going to only give beans, and then you're going to have bacon left over. So you're going to keep giving the beans that you always gave, but you're going to have bacon, and that's not bacon you're going to share. And that was their survival tactic, that everybody made beans, but we made beans together. And that's, family, it's the Fast and Furious, family is everything, Dom Toretto type of thing. Like, family was everything. So I think it wasn't necessarily, like, to me, I was disgusted by it, but like
I am too, but
but we don't, we don't know. I mean, I know enough probably to analyze why he said that, but like, there's the behavior we label as bad is a coping mechanism for someone else.
Right. And
that's all it is.
I
and we don't understand it.
Yes, I like to spot a light on behaviors like that, because obviously we want them to change, or that's how I feel. Like, these are behaviors that I believe can change, but if we're so caught up in the shame of it, there's not going to be any room for the change.
But if I'm shaming, then I can make myself look better when I help.
Exactly. And then it's a whole cycle. Ain't nobody changing. and the behaviors are remaining the same, and people are not speaking up. They're not encouraged to, because it's going to be an argument or a fight over understanding and transcending a situation.
Right. And the misinformation that's out there about what it means to change socioeconomic levels and groupings.
Right. Because there is, even if it's not socioeconomic, being used to one level of something and going to another is even scary for us personally who are going through it. But it really, the people around you question themselves, which is normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That is going to happen. If it doesn't happen, then we're robots up in this piece. If it doesn't happen, but it's how there are parts of recognizing, understanding, and transforming that is unpleasant. It's really unpleasant. So questioning our motives. I've seen this before. I've questioned my own self. I've questioned motives when I see other people are changing. And I've asked myself, I at least, and maybe there's some pride in there, where I will examine the behavior. Like if I feel jealous, exactly what does that mean? Why is that? Because that's fear for me. So why am I feeling that? It's making me come to face with, what do I feel that I will not be successful? Does this person's success mean anything to my own? And I really feel that it's once we examine and sit in these horrible emotions, because I don't like how they feel. Yes, that's when you get to change and understand the behavior so that you don't repeat it, and also you're able to transcend and grow something new within yourself. So that was a mouthful up in that.
Yes, and I think another part of it is who is expected to be able to do certain things. There's this saying, work in silence, don't tell anyone.
I know.
But a lot of successful people who face the struggle of jealousy, of people saying, well, how did you do that? They were working in silence, not on purpose, just because people didn't think they could do it. They were just disregarded. Like, oh, you're the family clown, and you barely made it through high school. So no one's really paying attention to you when you're doing your YouTube videos, and all of a sudden your YouTube takes off, but you were working in silence. Your only supporters were the people watching your YouTube, which wasn't your family, not because they hated it, just because, they just didn't think you had it in you. But then when you take off, it was like, well, how? Well, no one invited me anywhere because I'm the family disappointment. So I had lots of time to do lots of videos. Now I've got, views and whatever, however YouTube works. But, a lot of times people just have written certain individuals off, and that gives you, when you're written off, you have that quiet and that space to sort of experiment, unfurl your wings and learn how you fly. You know what I mean? And then when you're soaring, they're like, well, the nerve, and it's just like, nah, you gave me time to incubate and sort of develop my ideas and a plan, and here we are. And it's, so I think that's a lot of the shock and anger and envy, because you were not supposed to make it. You were this person, and this person to us, which meant we always had someone to say, well, at least I'm not Joe Blow over here, or at least I'm not Sally Sue. And now those two, the black sheep and the scapegoat, and now they're frolicking in their own field that they own. And you're still, chewing between the rocks here, because, chewing on rocks, because your energy was directed to something that wasn't benefiting you. And that's all it is. So
you done preached my life. Well, I did want to say, like, I have an issue with the work in silence thing. That is toxic. No, seriously, because we in the Black community, I always make everything about the Black community, but I'll say on Instagram too, I see all these posts, work in silence so that other people, like they can't cut you down, blah, blah, blah. And that says a lot about the type of environments that we are used to, but it's also, in my experience, not true that you can work in silence. Because when I think about successful people, and success to me is getting to a high level of something that you've been working on to achieve. When I think of successful people, they all had teams. I don't believe a person can get successful without support of others. Now, depending on who's supporting you, obviously there have to be trusted people, and it's not all the time the trusted people who help you, because some of them are also trying to steal your power or whatever, and you got to cut these people out. But that's a misconception that we can work in silence and alone. We got to have trusted individuals. That's how I feel. That's how I feel nourished, and that's how I feel encouraged to continue, because left on my own devices, I will stop so many things if I'm not getting encouragement from somewhere, seriously, because my own mental health and encouragement and positive thinking, it goes but so far. So
right. And I want to answer that, I want to take it back to something you said earlier about vocabulary for things. We didn't have the vocabulary, or it wasn't common knowledge, things that about people like malignant narcissists. The idea, the concept
what that is.
Codependency, the idea of, self-sabotage. We didn't necessarily, as a culture, or even in the public in general, have names for this. I went to school in a time where the kids who bullied everyone else were considered, because they had a lot of friends, victims that didn't want to be, because they could lead a group of people against one person. That was considered a positive trait, that they were leaders. No, they're psychopaths.
Right.
We have names for that now.
Right.
We didn't know what that was. All the principal could see back then is, this person has a bunch of people that they were able to lead into bullying you. That's leadership. You're just jealous because she has a lot of friends.
That is the most bullshittest thing I ever heard. I never heard of that before. That's like such crap. Go ahead.
Yeah, but it's like that was the view back in the day. Like these kids who eventually became framed as bullies were popular. They had leadership. They were good looking. They excelled at
mean
sports.
Girls.
The mean girls. You know what I mean? Oh, you're just mad because she's prettier. No, she's bullying me every day. Like now they're bullies, but we didn't have the names for that. And I think a lot of working in silence, it goes back to what I just said about, well, how did you get that? How is there a Black girl from a poor community at Ivy League school? How? So let me pick at you. So it's already a high pressure environment. Let me pick at you and make it worse. That kind of thing. So I think that's where the working in silence comes in, but then it overlaps with this idea of don't share. And that's where it becomes toxic, because I might know something for free that this other person is charging $9.99.
This is so true.
And I could just literally say 3 sentences that would change how you framed your podcast or your stuff on Instagram. But I'm going to force you to pay $9.99 to hear it, and I hear a crappy version because they really want to sell you the $99.
They're not giving you the fullness of it. They're still holding back.
It's still holding back because they want to it's a name for it, but they lead you a funnel. They want you to go deeper and deeper into the funnel, and it's just like, that's where it becomes toxic, where working in silence becomes, I can't share anything. Like I can't share resources. I can't, share, an idea that may not even work for me, but might be perfect for you. We can't brainstorm. We can't do anything because it has to all be mine.
And you can, in my opinion, you can go but so far anyway with that thought process. Because even if you quote unquote make it financially, there are many psychological repercussions and spiritual
And that's where it
repercussions
comes
for that.
out. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to analyze the bad behavior. Like, this is a coping mechanism.
Right.
You scurrying around in the darkness and posting at 1 a.m. so you could beat everyone else and all that kind of stuff. That's a coping mechanism.
Yes,
Like,
that's hilarious.
you know what I mean? Like, you're basically, there are people who mirror other feeds altogether. Like, give it 5 days, they're posting the same thing. Like, the
Yeah.
same thing down to the
That has
hashtag.
happened to me before, Willow.
Yeah.
I was turned off to the point of nausea. Like, I
Yeah.
felt nauseated. I was like, and you're not gonna give me credit on nothing?
Nothing, no hat
Not a
tip, no
thing.
nothing. I got
Yeah.
this idea from it, and it's acceptable to have those kind of feeds if you're giving acknowledgement. But
Right. Give some
a lot of
acknowledgement.
it,
That's my issue. I remember meeting this guy, which I did not wind up being with because there were quite a few red flags. But anyway, I remember him saying to me, when you post a quote, or like, you don't have to give credit because it's now yours because it's on your page. And he was a writer. I was like, how is that okay as a writer to do that? Like, I don't like, we learned about plagiarism in school. Like, this, it is not
again.
okay to steal somebody's something.
But what is that? That's what we were talking about before we started recording. About the internet is a great place to meet people because social media has told you everything about them. So
Right.
you're just throwing up quotes, with no attributions, and it's just like, oh, all right, let me put you on restricted mode because I don't want you stealing from me. Like, no.
Oh, that's a good idea. I did not know
Yeah.
that. What
Yeah.
I have done is muted a person because I'm like, this is pissing me off when I would see something that I posted on their
Yeah.
page, and I feel like I don't have any control, really. So
Yeah.
so
And it's not for us to worry about, but
right. It's not. But it's
for
just
their consequences, but for protection of our own intellectual property and our own
right.
creations,
Right.
our own content, we do have to take action and maybe mute them or restrict them or block them. Some people get blocked. Like, if you're too weird, you get blocked.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And that's where boundaries come in. But yes, so this was a very pleasant conversation and very insightful. It was very meaty. So do tell us, Willow, when your new book, the second part of your trilogy, is coming out, and let us know also where we can find you.
Well, I'm strictly on Amazon right now, so I'm under W.A. Ford, which is my writing name, W.A. Ford, and the second book will be out on the 22nd of August. So in a couple of weeks here. It's ebook for now, but by the release date, it should be full on. You can get the hardback. I mean, soft cover as well.
Book. Yeah.
Yeah, the physical book. I was like, what's it called? Hardback, softback. The physical book as well. No hardbacks. That's a whole other story. But so it'll come out, and this will be told from another character's perspective. It's a character that you meet in the first book, and it's sort of kind of hinting at a love interest. We see that develop later on.
So we got a bit of a love interest in the Fadian experiment. Is this an extension of that?
It's an extension of, yes, actually both of the potential love interests will be in this book, but it's told from the point of view of the alpha, or the initial Fadian. And it's basically, women in poverty, Black women, we get betrayed by the people who should be supporting us the most, which we discussed earlier.
So true.
So it's, we see his part and basically how he exchanged one set of shackles for another. He traded traded her safety for his own. And it's basically him making up for it. Like, it's him, realizing that he's basically no safer. no safer in this iteration of his enslavement than he was when the elders were holding him. So it's the steps he takes to ensure, it's basically him stepping up as you know, the leader of their relationship, because you know what happens to Kalia, and making them safe and saying, okay, and choosing her. You know what I mean? Like, you can flirt all you want to, but you have to make the choice to be with that person.
Right.
And this is his way of choosing. Kalia is my person. This is what I'm doing to ensure that she understands that, and to ensure that it's possible, given what happens to Kalia at the end of the first book. So.
Wow. And Willow, where can we find you?
I am everywhere. No, I am mainly on Instagram. My writing page is The Far Back Room on Instagram, and my personal page is Willow Ford 213. And yeah, I also have a webpage, but it's not updated enough really to send you there. But you can go. I promise at some point I will make it a place that is not only where you can see my thoughts and blogs, but that you can also purchase merchandise and my books. But we're not there yet. We're getting there.
Okay. It's a work in progress. And I just wanted to say thank you again, Willow, for your time, your energy, your books, and how they're packed with so much of these concepts that we need to learn from as a Black community, as a community in whole. And I truly admire how you compact it into, you know, this story. There's just so many concepts in it. So I appreciate what you are bringing to light in the creative way that you are. So thank you so much again. And it was an absolute pleasure. And please do come again. And thank you, listeners, for listening. And I look forward to your feedback. And it's been Rachel and Willow, and talk to you next time. Bye.